Hello, heroes and Zargons. I'm Alfred, and this is the Trials and Tribulations of Zargon, a series which details the many ways in which the Emperor's heroes foil Zargon and his minions in their plots to conquer the Empire. In it, we'll review the published quests and any house rules or modifications I'm using to make the game more interesting and challenging. This is the 6th of my house rules videos. In it, we'll cover the level advancement deck for the elf. For info on why I designed level advancement decks and how they work, see House Rules 2, linked below. I'll share part of that video here to let my former self quickly recap the process for gaining a level. Here's how it works. Each class has a deck of 10 improvement cards. When a hero completes 3 quests, and again every 3 quests thereafter, the hero can seek training. Training costs 500 gold coins per level, and each subsequent level costs an additional 100 gold coins. So, for example, a hero with no levels must complete 3 quests and then pay 500 gold coins to draw from the leveling deck. If a hero has already drawn from that deck once, they must complete an additional 3 quests before they draw again. Then, they must pay 600 gold coins to do so. Now that you know how the system works, let's talk about the elf. The elf is a hybrid character and therefore needs to advance along both combat and spellcasting lines. The trick is trying to make that happen without the character falling behind on both fronts. Luckily, the game itself provides some really useful tools for strengthening the elf's spellcasting. Several of the elf spells are far stronger than the elemental spells. On the combat front, I wanted to make sure I was adding options without stepping on the toes of the barbarian or the dwarf, whom I had decided would complement the barbarian by being more defensively focused. With those principles in mind, let's take a look at the deck. First, the raw stat array. As a reminder, I consider raw stats to be body points, mind points, movement dice, attack dice, and defend dice. Elves are traditionally faster and more agile than other races, so it was obvious to me that the elf deck should contain one card that increases a character's speed. I initially thought this card wasn't very good, but it probably adds a lot to the elf's versatility, since it enables the elf to wear heavy armor and still roll 2 dice to move, for example. I also added what I considered to be the baseline number of body and mind point cards to the deck, 2 body and 1 mind. A fully advanced elf then will roll 3 movement dice, have 8 body points, and 5 mind points. Next, I needed spell cards. These basically wrote themselves. I added 3 cards that gave access to new spells. 1 that lets the elf choose a spell, and 2 that let the elf draw a card at random. The choice card I called Superior Elven Magic, and it reads, select a spell from the elf spell group. You may prepare that spell instead of one of your elemental spells. The other 2, just titled Elven Magic, read, draw a spell at random from the elf spell group. You may prepare that spell instead of one of your elemental spells. These 3 cards let the elf collect 3 cards from the elf spell group. The elf can then expand the number of spells taken into a dungeon with increased magical capacity. That card reads, you may prepare a number of spells equal to the number of mind points you have. You may not prepare duplicate spells. If you do not already have additional spells, you may return this card to the deck and redraw. Together with the mind point advancement, this lets the elf prepare 5 of the 6 spells that they will learn through leveling. The elf's magic is innate, while the wizard's is trained, so I had no compunctions about having mind points interact differently with the elf's new spell cards. In addition, I knew the elf was going to have at least 1 combat skill, which would also use mind points, so I wanted to limit spellcasting a bit more. These 4 cards left me with 2 additional options. Since I had already given the elf extra movement, I was looking for ways to exploit that through skills. Matt had already wanted to be able to move and take an action and then move again, and I always thought that ability was extremely cool, so Stick and Move was born. It reads, you may move, take an action, and then move. You may do this a number of times equal to your mind points per dungeon. This ability is especially useful for targeting enemies around corners or casting spells like Hypnotic Blaze that require you to enter a room. If the blaze goes badly, you aren't out of luck, you can just retreat. The elf's final skill, Acrobatics, has been a lot of fun in the Rise of the Dread Moon. With it, you may move through squares occupied by monsters or furniture. If you move through a square occupied by a monster, you must roll an attack die. On a black shield, you take 1 damage, and your turn ends on the square adjacent to the monster. If you end your turn on a piece of furniture, you attack with 1 extra attack die. You may use this ability a number of times equal to your mind points per dungeon. This skill is deliberately tuned not to step on Veil of Mist or the Rogue's Pass-Through Monsters ability, which is why it has a fail chance. To balance that out, the elf gets the opportunity to climb onto something and take a shot at someone with an extra attack die. I wanted to give the heroes more opportunities to interact with furniture and extra mobility options. It's taken so long to release these videos that Matt and I have switched seats and he is Zargoning me through Dread Moon. So far, I've really enjoyed using this ability. there's been some serious tension when my ability to get into and hypnotic blaze a room depends on not rolling that black shield. This video wraps up my videos on the leveling system for the 4 core heroes. I plan to do some more outlining levels for the new releases as well. With the experience under our belt from these levels, I would call them a really solid first draft. However, I suspect our next campaign will try someone else's work for variety's sake. If I ever come back to revise these levels in the future, your input would be invaluable. Let's plot together in the comments below.